Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Chelsea in the same sentence, but it's been emerging in the past 24 hours or so, and that is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's name was broached when Chelsea and Barcelona held informal discussions recently. Now, Aubameyang's Barcelona contract runs until 2025, but there is a break clause in that contract next summer, and that's on the club side and on the players' side, whoever wishes to break that contract at that point. Now, it might not be as wild as it sounds, because Aubameyang has got a very, very, very good relationship with the Chelsea head coach, Thomas Tuchel. He played under Thomas Tuchel for 2 seasons when Tuchel was manager of Borussia Dortmund. And in those 2 seasons, 2015-16 and 2016-17, Aubameyang played 95 games under Thomas Tuchel and scored an astonishing 79 goals. Now, whenever he's been in any kind of strife during his last few months at Arsenal, whenever there was a news conference and Thomas Tuchel was asked a question about Aubameyang, he was always really, really positive about him. He goes, yeah, sometimes Pierre would turn up late, but he'd have such a big smile on his face that you couldn't stay angry with him for very, very long. Look, it could have just been something that was said in passing, but the fact that it was is quite an interesting potential development on this one.
I think as far as Aubameyang is concerned, I think it would be a bit surprising. It would be a bit of a shock if he was to go from being the Arsenal captain a few months later to playing for Chelsea. I think he's definitely a player that Chelsea have talked about in discussions with Barcelona. His name has cropped up. And as Dharmesh said, if you look at his scoring record when he worked with Thomas Tuchel, it was absolutely exceptional. And I'm sure he's somebody who, if he did move to Stamford Bridge, could make a big impact at the club. But I think Chelsea at the moment are focused on other targets, and their main target at the moment, of course, is Wesley Fofana at Leicester. Leicester asking for a world record fee for a centre-back of more than £80 million. I don't think Chelsea will pay that much, but I think Chelsea are prepared to pay £60 million for him. And there have been reports that Chelsea have made an official bid. Now, that has not been confirmed by us, but I do know that Chelsea are willing to pay that kind of fee for Wesley Fofana. Interesting what Fofana himself does, because Brendan Rodgers has come out and said this is the best place for him. He's got a long-term contract.
Brendan would say that, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, he would, but he did also say that he'd had long chats with him, talked about his career, how it was going to develop, how if he stayed at Leicester, he would play regularly, which would help him get into the France squad, and who knows, maybe even play at the World Cup. If he went to Chelsea, would that necessarily happen? I think it's interesting to see what happens with the player himself now, because going back a couple of years when he was at Saint-Etienne, he sort of agitated for a move away from there, and we've seen him sort of playing around a bit on social media this week. So interesting to see what happens with Fofana. Also, staying at Chelsea, reports in the Spanish media this morning that Cesar Azpilicueta, who's been linked for a long time with a move to Barcelona, reports in Spain this morning that he'd actually telephoned the Barcelona manager Xavi to tell him this morning, I'm sorry, but I will not be moving to the new camp. I'm going to sign a new contract at Chelsea. And in the last few minutes, David Ornstein, a good friend of the show who works at The Athletic, has actually said on social media that Cesar Azpilicueta has signed a new 2-year contract at Chelsea, and that should be announced by the club shortly.
Which could be bad news for the prospect of Frankie de Jong going to Chelsea if we were talking about a possible swap deal of some kind.
Just picking up on something Carve said then, and you mentioned swap deal. Just 2 points I'd make. Firstly, on Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Barcelona, of course, have brought in Robert Lewandowski, chased him all summer. Is that going to impact the amount of game time that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is going to get? And Carve mentioned there about Wesley Fofana, and Chelsea may be prepared to pay £60 million. We're talking about potential swap deals involving players with Frankie de Jong. I just wonder whether Chelsea will try and tempt Leicester to take £60 million and maybe explore the possibility of players plus cash for Wesley Fofana, because there will be a few players at Chelsea who will, Thomas Tuchel will say, look, in this new look Chelsea that I want, we might need to release some of these players, but then on the flip side, it's going to have to be players that Leicester City would want as well.